Hello guys, welcome back to another wonderful session of learning with Prepclass. My name is Tutor Olalekon Israel, your Prepclass English tutor, and I am super excited to have you join me in today's session of learning. Now in today's session, we will continue from what we stopped in the last video. In the last video, we were answering questions on the comprehension passage and we answered questions 41 to 45. So in this video, we will continue with questions 46 to 50. Remember, the purpose of this session is to help you prepare for your forthcoming Jamb examination. So, without wasting much time, take a moment to subscribe to this channel, turn on the post notification so you can be notified whenever we upload any new content. Alright, let's begin. Now, before we move on to questions 46 to question 50, I'm going to read the passage with the answers to questions 41 to 45. So you have an understanding of what the passage entails. So we can move on from there. Alright, let's read. Before any detailed analysis begins, the first thing to do with the raw data is to check through the field record books and questionnaires for any mistakes, inconsistencies, and incompetence. In some cases, it may be possible to correct any discovered shortcomings. When it is not possible to carry out these corrections, in most scientific experiments, such revisits are clearly possible. This is true of many surveys too. A road traffic survey conducted to find out the amount and frequency of daily traffic between two towns cannot be expected to be reproducible. There is no way of going back to check whether the number of vehicles reported for any particular hour is correct or not. Now that is what questions 41 to 45. Those gaps that have been filled are gaps that actually showed questions 41 to 45. So now we will continue with the passage answering questions 46 to 50. Alright, let's continue. With open questions, the dash have to be classified into relatively small number or groups. With open questions, the dash have to be classified into relatively small number of groups. Now, the gap we have there is for question 46. Moving on. The process of classifying answers and of sometimes identifying them by number and letter is called dash. That is number gap 47. When closed-ended questions are used, it is possible to code all the possible answers before they are actually received. This is called dash. That is question number 48. When it is done, it should not be what's there. It should be when it is done. A check through the answer for proper classification, numbering, and lettering is still called for at this stage. This whole process of checking through questionnaires and notebooks is called dash. Collected data will eventually have to be used in drawing dash and writing a report about the population from which it came. Now this is the passage. We've read questions 46 to 50. We've read the passage with the number gaps 46 to 50. So we are going to use this passage to answer each question. Alright, let's begin. Alright, now for question 46. With open questions, the dash have to be classified into relatively small number of groups. A. Methods. B. Responses. C. Errors. D. Conclusion. Now, what are open questions? First, we have to understand what open questions are. Because the question reads, with open questions, the dash have to be classified into relatively small number of groups. Now, an open-ended question is a question that allows the respondent to express himself or herself freely on a given subject. It is not a question that has a premeditated answer. But it allows you to express yourself freely. For example, we can very easily imagine open-ended questions such as describe your morning routine. Now, this will allow you to express yourself freely. There is no specific answer for this question. It's an open-ended question. So going back to our question in this passage, with open questions, the dash have to be classified into relatively small number of groups. Now, the answer to this question is option B, responses. Because we're talking about questions here. With open questions, the responses have to be classified into relatively small number of groups. We have questions here, so there should be responses to questions. So the answer is option B. Alright, moving on, question 47. The process of classifying answers and of sometimes identifying them by number and letter is called dash. The process of classifying answers and of sometimes identifying them by number and letter is called dash. A. Recording. B. Recoding. C. Encoding. D. Coding. Now, the answer to this question is encoding. Encoding is the process of converting data from one form to another or to represent complicated information in a simple or short way. It is the process of converting data from one form to another or to represent complicated information in a simple or short way. Take for instance, I gave out a survey, I gave out a questionnaire, and I got 50 responses. Now, for each response, there is a code. But when I start examining the responses, I can see that we have what? Similar responses. So those similar responses, I gather them together and classify them and give them, assign them a number or a letter. I encode them with that number or letter. Those similar questions, each question actually has its own code. But when I see similar responses, I classify them and I assign a number or letter to them, and that is called what? Encoding. So the answer is option C, encoding. The process of classifying answers and of sometimes identifying them by number and letter is called encoding. Right. Moving on, question 48. When closed-ended questions are used, it is possible to code all the possible answers before they are actually received. When closed-ended questions are used, it is possible to code all the possible answers before they are actually received. This is called dash. A. Precoding. B. Coding. C. Encoding. D. Recoding. Now, what are closed-ended questions? A closed-ended question offers, as its name suggests, a limited number of answers. For example, if I ask you, are you a boy? The answer could either be what? Yes or no. That's a closed-ended question. It has a limited number of answers. For example, if you go for an interview, the interviewee may choose a response from a panel of given proposals or a simple yes or no. They are intended to provide a precise, clear, identifiable, and easily classified answers. So the answer to this question is precoding. When we go back to the question, when closed-ended questions are used, questions that have limited number of answers, it is possible to code all the possible answers before. Now, if you are doing something before, that is what? Before they are actually received. It is possible to code all the possible answers before. So that is what? Pre-coding. Before they are actually received. So the answer is option A. Alright, moving on, question 49. When this is done, what we have is what is done. That is an error. It should be when this is done, a check through the answer for proper classification, numbering, and lettering is still called for at this stage. This whole process of checking through questionnaires and notebooks is called dash. A. Editing. B. Posting. C. Listing. D. Auditing. Now, editing is a process that involves the revising of the content, organization, grammar, and presentation of a piece of writing. Revising the content, organization, grammar, and presentation of a piece of writing. Posting means what? To announce, to display, or to publish something. Listing is a published list or an item in a published list. Auditing refers to the process or act of conducting an official financial inspection of a company or its account. So the answer is editing. A process that involves revising the content. When you are checking through, you are revising the content, organization, grammar, and presentation of a piece of writing. So the answer, this whole process is called editing. Right. Moving on, question 50. Collected data will eventually have to be used in drawing dash. Collected data will eventually have to be used in drawing dash and writing a report about the population from which it came. A. Reference. B. Examples. C. Conclusion. D. Analogies. Now, reference refers to the action of mentoring or alluding to something. The use of a source of information in order to ascertain something. Maybe you got a particular information from a different source. You have to reference that source, the source of your information. Option B, examples. Examples refer to something used to represent other things because it has all the main qualities or characteristics that they also have. Option C, conclusion. Conclusion refers to a judgment or decision reached by reasoning. Option D, analogy. Analogy is a comparison between one thing and another, typically for the purpose of explanation or clarification. So the answer is conclusion. Collected data will eventually have to be used in drawing conclusion and writing a report about the population from which it came. Now, drawing conclusions is using information that is implied or inferred to make meaning out of what is not clearly stated. You've gotten what responses from your questionnaire. So from those information, from those collected data, you now draw a conclusion and you write what a report about the population from which it came. You arrive at a conclusion. So the answer is option C. Collected data will eventually have to be used in drawing conclusion and writing a report about the population from which it came. Alright, and with that we've come to the end of this wonderful session. Please do not forget to subscribe to this channel. If you enjoyed this video, click on the like button. Do not forget to drop your questions in the comment section. Also share this content with your friends and loved ones. Thank you for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day.